Hi everyone, it's Linda from LyndaCreates, and I have a Valentine's Day or pre-Valentine's Day project. It is an embroidered piece attached to the front of a card. Did a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it turned out to be so much fun. Learned some new things, learned a new stitch actually. Check out the video so you can see the new stitch. You can see how I made these, and you will see a new solution I have for turning your stitched projects into cards. So join me and check out how I made this. When I start working on an idea for a project, a slow stitch project, I generally start with the idea of what the colors are, and I kind of base it on, well, in this case it's a Valentine's project, so it seemed natural to go towards the pinks. I pulled out fabrics and threads that I had in the pink family, which is where I generally start. I have an idea again that it's going to be slow stitched. Had a little bit of thrifted cotton fabric here, a little modern, but I could take pieces of it. Pink trim, more vintage lace. Of course, pulled out my pearl cotton and then my embroidery floss. So I just want to share, that's where I start and try to figure out what I have, what I can work with. Let's get going. Okay, so I'm starting off with my base fabric, which is 5 inches square. The main piece is going to be this thrifted fabric, but I have an idea of what I want to do. So I want to, this is my pattern. Now I love this shape and the flowers, but I also love that and these guys here. So I'm thinking it might be something like that in the shape, not the back, but just that part of it. So I am going to cut this out. I didn't realize how much I love this fabric until I saw all of its possibilities. So I have a rough idea of the heart shape that I want. So I'm going to pin it together. I also want to add, I think I'll add some of this lace. It was between this lace and this lace. So I'm just going to take my washable marker and trace around it. And this will give me an idea of where I could stitch out to. I should pin it to keep it all together. So now you can see where the stitching's going, or where the heart will be. Now the next thing is to see what parts you want to place the lace. That could be very pretty that way. The other thing is I also have my sheer fabric. I could still see the stitching underneath, but maybe add a little pink there. Now I folded that over so I have a clean edge, and I'll do some stitching to hold that down. So first thing I need to do is I want to do a basting stitch on this to hold it in place. And when you're doing a basting stitch, the nice thing is that you know you're going to take it off again later, so it doesn't need to be a perfect stitch. Your knots could be showing. Just want to make sure it holds in place. Okay. So all I'm going to do is, again, some big basting stitches to hold my lace in place. It really does just get easier without a whole bunch of pins in the way. Okay. So now that you have everything tacked down, make sure you don't have any pins caught in the bottom. And at this point, you don't even need to knot off your tail if you don't want, because you want to be able to pull it out later. So now we can start just like that, start embroidery. So I pulled out a few colors that I wanted to work with. I have 3 shades of pink and 2 shades of green. One is more of a yellowy green, soft, but another one is more of an aqua green. So I have 2 shades of green. I'm going to start with the stitch that goes along this edge. It is like a crazy quilt. I'm going to do a herringbone stitch. Okay, the idea when you do something like this, if you're going to cut where the blue line is, you're going to want to try to stay away from stitching on the blue line or outside of it, because when you cut it out, you potentially can end up cutting that piece off and have a loose thread, so you don't want to do that. So what I'm doing now is I'm laying the thread down at an angle so I can see the angle that I want, and I'm going in, catching all the fabrics, and I'm running a parallel stitch to the seam that I'm adding, or the edge of the fabric. Okay. So I have one stitch like that, and now I'm holding the thread again so that it is a 90-degree angle to the first stitch, and I'm going to come in as my motto always is have fun. Oh, and another thing I want to show, I've been having some trouble pulling the thread out or the needle out, so I found this as a needle puller tool. You just hook it on there, you pinch, you push it down with your thumb once your needle's in there, and it pulls it out very nicely. It also is a thread cutter right here and a thimble edge right there. So it's multi-tool, but it really does help with the if you're having any kind of trouble with the pinching and pulling part. So just want to make sure that that looks good. And the pinching and pulling, I have trouble when I'm sewing on lots of thick or through thick fabric. This is not so bad at all, but I just want to share that. It does come in very handy, and I'll put a link in the description. I was so happy to find that because it really did help me. So when you're doing just like a couple fabrics and one is a sheer, you really don't need it. I found I need it mostly with upholstery fabric. Okay, so I have that herringbone stitch done, and that holds down my 2 fabrics. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is start on some flowers, and I think I'm going to start with this larger one, and you can see there's two tones in there. Let's see, there's 2 colors. It's really dark, which I'm not too happy with, but I'm going to come in with 2 shades of pink. Yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to start by doing the flower itself, the regular petals. I'm going to use 3 strands of this darker pink. I'm going to do very long lazy daisy stitches, 2 per petal basically. Come back down. I cut that stitch. So I'm doing another lazy daisy stitch. So there's one petal. And then I'll do another lazy daisy stitch. So I'm leaving some blank spaces, as you can see, because I'm going to come in with another lighter color of floss. I finished the petals on the flower. You can see the two tones in there. I'm going to now start with the lighter green shade, and if you could see behind this on the fabric itself, there's a branch with little dots on the end. So I'm going to do the stem in this lighter green color. Now I'm going to do something called a split stitch for the stem, and it is exactly like it says. You want to come up in the middle of that stitch. So you do a stitch, you go forward. I'm going to go up to where there's a joint right there. Okay. And now I'm going to come back a little bit and start the next stitch right between the threads. I'm working with 3 strands of embroidery floss, and I'm just going up, right now I'm just going up the main part of the stem. So here I used the lazy daisy stitch, but I did it really long. So here what I'm going to do is the same lazy daisy stitch, but really short. So you'll be able to see the difference in how it looks, or the different looks it can have. Now again, here I should be using this. So look how different that one tiny little stitch looks compared to these big long stitches. So sometimes just a little variation on a stitch makes a big difference. So I have to say, I'm kind of getting used to this needle pulling tool. I just got it yesterday, but I think it will be, once I get used to it, I think it'll be really a good tool to save my hands. So behind the herringbone stitch, you can see a few petals back there. So I'm just going to do just a couple of little stitches, not even the lazy daisy stitch, but just a few stitches to add the color back in. Okay, I finished these little flowers. I still have to go back in with the lighter color, but I decided to do a stitch here on this petal in the light pink, but I'm doing something different. I'm doing a blanket stitch, but again, it's a long blanket stitch, so it will create the flower petal, and the stitch starts off like a lazy daisy, but then the next stitch you would come back down and just do this little blanket stitch at the top. So it's just connected at the top. So my thread is coming out here. I'm going to go back in, come out at the top, and make sure this wraps around behind it. Can you see along the top edge has a little bit of a ridge like a blanket stitch would. So I'm going to finish this flower off with these modified or elongated blanket stitch. The next step I'm doing is adding little dots to this pattern. What I'm going to do is add a bead to the end of each of those stems. And I might add more, I don't know. And I am going to do 2 stitches in each one just to hold it and make sure it stays in place. And I'm using a single strand of embroidery floss for each bead. I'm not quite done with the beads, but I see that I'm going to have some blank area right here, and I wanted to add like a little bit of this stem part to come up out of there. And it's, I think, well, I might go this direction. Do you see this little piece right here? I want it to look like it comes out right there. So I'm just going to draw it in. So it's just going to be like, okay, so something like that. And I could actually, so I'm just going to finish adding the rest of the beads, but I saw this open space and I was trying to think what I wanted to do, and I'll do that next. So I'm working on that piece I just added, that I just drew in there. So I'm going to do double fly stitch. I'm making this up. So a fly stitch, you make like the letter Y. Do the angle on the left, angle on the right, and you come up in the center and go straight down. Okay. But what I'm going to do is come back up when I'm going to do the second fly stitch underneath. And instead of moving down further, I'm going to go do a second armature out to the sides. So it makes a double fly stitch. There's the first armature. And I'll do a second one out here. end that right there. I'm doing a single wrap French knot with 3 strands of embroidery floss. I'm just adding that to the ends of each of those arms or leaves. And the trick with French knots is to just hold the tail in place until you do that final pull through. It makes for a neat and tidy French knot. Once around, go back in the same hole that you came out of, holding the tail. In this area, see these white dots in there? They're like just circles. I'm doing a back stitch around each shape. If you can see that, it's a circle, and I've stitched all the way around it. I'm going back to where the stem comes out. Okay. And now I'm going to the opposite side, just outside of this running stitch that I made. So what happens is it gets raised up a little bit. See this stitch right here? It's slightly raised. So the outer stitch gives it a little bit of lift and makes it look like a pillow slightly. I decided to start working on this leaf down here. Actually, they may be flower petals. Oh, they're flower petals, but I needed to add a little bit of greenery down here. So I'm doing a leaf stitch. So I'm debating here. I had those 3 little dots over here, and I needed something to fill it in. I have these pink wooden beads to imitate little flowers. Is that I have this yellow, and I'll introduce this as the center of those because I'm going to add it to this flower too. Let's see what happens. So here's the challenge right now, is that I wanted to put a big French knot in the middle of the bead, but the needle, a bigger needle, wouldn't fit through the center of the bead. So I had to use my smaller needle, which is fine, but then I can't put 3 strands of floss through it. So I'm doing my smaller needle and 2 strands of floss. Needle goes through, floss goes through. So I'm going to try to do something. I'm doing 3 knots, and I'm going down into this bead. So far so good. What I could do, come up again inside the bead, preferably not inside the knot. And go back down into it. At least do 2 of these knots. Oh, there. And I want to repeat these so they're not by themselves. So I wanted to do a little bit of stitching to hold down the lace. So I'm using a color that's similar to the ecru. And I'm just kind of doing a few satin stitches to add like a highlight of the flower petals. I don't want to fill it up too much, but I do want some stitching there, and I'm hoping to work out a way to add some beads to it as well, so we'll see how that goes. Let me show you what I'm doing on the lace. Just little highlights along the edge, little satin stitches where the petals would be. I'm going to finish off the edge now with a blanket stitch using number 8 pearl cotton. So doing a blanket stitch, you just come up and catch it. I'm going to do it around this corner. And what you could do is like keep the points together and just angle the corner like that. And this is just a very simple blanket stitch just to finish off that edge. Here's a finished piece. I still have to mount it and wash away the blue marking, but I just want to share how that one turned out. And I have a second one. I've been working on a second one, and let me show you. It's similar, but I tried a few different things on it, some different stitches, like I did a leaf here, but I'm trying this different edge. So I wanted to share how that was turning out. So after doing a little research, I found this stitch online, and I thought it would be perfect for this project, but it's a little more tricky than I thought to get consistent look, but I wanted to share it anyway if you wanted to try it. And it basically ends with the little knot at the top of each blanket stitch, and it looks so cute, but I just wish it were more consistent. I'm using pearl cotton. This is, I believe, a size 8. Okay, so you come in from the front. Now don't pull it all the way through. You leave a little bit of a gap. You bring your needle around to the front so the thread's towards you, but on the left-hand side. Now you take this loop, and I'll make it a little bit smaller so you can see it. So you take that loop and you twist it, or you just turn it so that the right-hand thread is in front of the left-hand thread. So you're making a figure 8, but the right-hand one is in front. Now you take your needle, and again the thread comes along to the left-hand side, and you're going to come up and insert your needle to the back, up from behind in that loop. And I'm sorry, my fingers are so dry, the air is so dry here. Okay, so you bring your needle up through that hoop. Now, this is the part that I kind of learned. You want to hold gently, hold this side of it so that it stays flat against the top surface along the top here, and you gently pull. But you kind of want to hold onto it. And after you have this twisted knot happening at the top, you can gently tighten it. Until it creates that knot. So like I said, it looks really cute. I was a little concerned sharing it because it looks a lot more complex, and it is a little complex. I have to admit that. But I thought it turned out to be a really pretty edge, so I'm sharing it. I kind of want to stop the thread now while I still have some length on it. So I'm just going to take it through the fabric. So it leaves that knot up there. Look, the sun's coming through. Well, I could do one of two things. I can close the blinds, or I can just have some relaxing stitching with the sun coming through. Here are the two hearts that I made. Just want to show. This is a regular blanket stitch around the edge. Much easier. Adds a very tidy edge around it. So it's a perfectly good stitch to use. I highly recommend it. And this is the second one that I did with the, I didn't see a name for this stitch, but it's like a blanket stitch with a little knot at the end. It is definitely one of those things that if you want to learn a new stitch, then by all means, it's really cool. It does add an extra little detail to it that's beautiful, but it is more fussy. This is what the work surface can look like. This is all the stuff, or not even all, half the stuff that I brought out to work on this project. So I'm going to have to clean all of this up and then do the next step. But I just wanted to share this. It was just kind of a happy chaos of working on a multimedia project like this. So just wanted to share. So I cut down a piece of cardstock. It's 5.5 wide by 8.5 long, folded in half. So it's an A2, when it's done, it's an A2 card size. And I'm going to stick down my embroidered heart to it. So I'm going to put it down semi-fairly permanently. So if you're a paper crafter, you know about red tape. It sticks anything. And I was even told at a Creativation by these people, or a person there, that they actually use this red tape on airplanes, which then made me a little nervous. Maybe I should feel assured my craft project won't fall apart, but it made me a little nervous about airplanes. But anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this down with red tape. It may hold airplanes together, but I don't know if it'll hold fabric. And if you fly a lot, you might be hoping that I prove that it holds really well. I'm also using a titanium non-stick scissor with it because it can get really messy. So it's a double stick tape. So now just going to peel off the backing. Okay, I have the tape on the fabric. I have one and only one shot of sticking this down. So I don't think it's going anywhere. So if you don't need to remove the backing for any reason, or you don't expect someone to remove it off of their card, I recommend this red tape because it's not going anywhere. Okay, no one tell him, but this is going to be a Valentine card for my boyfriend. So please don't tell him. And if he's watching, act surprised. Anyway, this is for my boyfriend. This is his Valentine's card. He loves when I make him stuff. And I hope you try this. I will put the template on my website. You could download it for free. Fabric, find what fabric you want. Thrifted, whatever you find. I think the vintage lace adds so much to it. I saw this possibility in a whole bunch of flowers, but I did not expect it to come out looking like that, which I'm so happy with. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Please check out my website, LyndaCreates.com. That's Lynda with a Y. LyndaCreates.com for more inspiration. Please hit the subscribe and the like button to be notified when I upload new videos every Sunday morning. And I hope you try something like this. Thanks for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.